Okay, 11 o'clock, welcome back. Our next guests are waiting here. I'd like to introduce you to Jakob Dambon. He's a data scientist at Swiss Re and an external lecturer at ETH Zurich and University of Lucerne, and also to Matteo Vagnoli. He's a senior analytics manager at Swiss Re, originating advanced analytics solutions to enhance client profitability. As we all know, over the last few years, the global supply chain experienced severe disruptions due to COVID, as you all know, geopolitical conflicts, and of course, natural events. Jakob and Matteo will now present the Swiss Re Vessel Accumulation Dashboard, which allows the user to assess the port congestion state and to take rapid data-driven decisions to have less risk of supply chain disruption. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Cornelia. So, as Cornelia was saying, we are going to show you a solution that we developed as Swiss Re for vessel monitoring and really monitoring the vessel accumulation at ports, particularly. And first things first, Jakob and I, we are just the frontmen, let's say, of a team, because this solution has been built really in a cross-functional way with many people involved, from business analysts and data scientists, solution architects, and so on, really in order to solve a business problem that one of our clients had initially, and then we were really able to scale this solution across different markets and line of business. And Jakob and I, just one word, we are part of the Advanced Analytics COE of Swiss Re, and our team really focus on creating advanced analytics solutions for both internal and external clients, as well as focus on responsible AI and analytics governance framework, both again for internal and external clients. So the way that we are going to show you this dashboard is, I'm going to set the scene first, really to explain why we developed this solution, and then I'll leave the presentation to Jakob in order to show you the technical side of it. So of course, a couple of words about the marine supply chain and the global supply chain. So what we have been seeing lately is that in the last 30 years, the marine supply chain really increased exponentially. I mean, just a few numbers here. Up to 2022, basically, 80% of the goods that have been traded globally, they go through vessels, which is astonishing numbers. And therefore, the capacity of vessels really increased a lot, also during this period. And now we have vessels that they are able to transport more than 24,000 containers in just one vessel. And if we think about the supply chain, the marine supply chain, there is one critical bottleneck, which is, of course, the ports, because all the vessels, they have to go through ports. And also these ports and the risk of ports is really concentrated. I mean, just think about that. The top 100 ports, they manage 75% of all goods. And the top 10 ports in terms of goods that are managed in the supply chain, they are all located in Asia, between Shanghai, which is the busiest port globally, and then there are a few in China and Malaysia. So it's really a concentrated risk that we have there. Then a couple of points in order really to explain the port congestions that we have and why do we have port congestion. Of course, main reasons are, of course, high traffic of vessel, high volume. External factors like COVID. We have seen that really vessels were accumulating at ports due to COVID and increase on online shopping, for example. Then there are also strikes of workers, but also natural catastrophes or geopolitical conflict, eventually, as we have seen with the war in Ukraine. And still to today, even after 2 years after COVID, we see that there is an increase in shipping times compared to pre-COVID times. So shipping times, they have increased on average around 25% of the time. And these, of course, translate on business impact, because on one end, there is inventory cost that has grown over time. In 2021, on average for all the company was more than 300 million. And of course, this delay also results in loss of revenue, which can be estimated on around 180 million per each company relying on marine supply chain. So there are some risks there, definitely, on vessel accumulation side. And we have been asked by both internal clients, of course, Swiss Re being both a reinsurer but also a direct insurer. We have to monitor risks on that end for reinsurance point of view, but also providing advanced analytic solution for external clients. We have been asked by, for example, port authorities, how can they monitor the accumulation that they have and the risk that they have at ports. So, of course, the first part is really to understand the risks that, for example, port authority can have, and why do we have these risk, vessel accumulation risks. And, of course, these risks, as mentioned, are due to the risk are supply chain disruption. Then there are risks as complex port operation. And just think, for example, if a vessel is just waiting to enter the port, so it's drifting in front of the port, the risk of knockout events, so being hit by a storm, just increase exponentially. So that's another risk. So once we have understood the risks, then the next step is really to monitor them continuously. And nowadays, most of the containers, so each individual containers and each ship can provide data due to sensors that are installed there. And these data, most of the time, are available in real time. Therefore, there is a huge computational challenge here in how to process all this data automatically and have dashboards and really risk insights that are updated continuously in a real time. So that if we have all these risk insights that are updated automatically, continuously, then of course a port authority, a decision maker can take decisions that are data-driven and inform in basically on the fly, rely completely on data, and therefore they are also able to eventually plan based on unplanned events and also monitor the risk and exposure over time. So how do we manage this really complex scenario and these computational issues? I'll leave to you, Jakob, to explain this.
Thank you. So what I want to show you after setting the scene is our approach and our pipeline to provide this vessel accumulation dashboard. And here, what we want to convey is really that we want to analyze the ports and the vessel data on a global scale. So therefore, we need an automated pipeline that does it for you, for us. And we have installed this in Stargate. So this is our Foundry license that we have from Palantir. And basically, this hosts the data, processes it, and then also the dashboard at the end is running on it. Now, let's go through step by step, starting with the data, what we have available. There, first, it's the AIS data that stands for Automatic Identification System, and it's mandatory for vessels to have it. And basically, it gives you the location as a point coordinate, the speed, the status of a vessel, etc. So there, depending on what kind of license you have, you can get them almost real time, or in our case, we have them on an hourly frequency. Then the other part you can see in the middle, it's the port locations. These are again point coordinates with some additional information, maybe about the size or the type of port, but basically we have these types of 2-point data sets. And the next step that I'm also going to give you a deep dive in is linking these, so that we at the end know which vessel is at which port, or is it waiting there currently, is it currently moored and being loaded or unloaded. Now, when we have this information of which vessel is at which port, we enrich it. And we can do this by another license that we have from Clarkson's, and there we have the so-called core data. So this data is about the properties of a vessel, like the capacity or the building year, etc. And with that, we have everything put together to visualize it, as you see in the first version that we have here on the vessel accumulation dashboard. Now, I want to focus on this linking the vessel and the port locations to give this talk a little bit meat to the bone in terms of processing the data. And here, what is given in this small figure, I hope that it's visible. There's a yellow dot representing a port and some blue dots representing vessels. Some of them are arriving, some of them are departing, maybe some are simply passing by. And with this kind of data, we want to link the vessels and ports. So on the next slide, let's take a look at what we have. So from this global scale of the ports, it's evident that they are very different from each other. If you compare Shanghai to Rotterdam, etc., from the shape, from the layout, from the size, they are very much different. So what you can see here is our attempt to give some port areas to a designated port. And I show you an example here on the left-hand side. It's the port of Felixstowe. You can go to vesselfinder.com and get a real-time update on it. And in this port of Felixstowe, there are some key features that you usually find at the port. The first one is the location, usually only represented with a point, or at least that's the data that we have available. The second one is where they actually have the container terminals or where the vessels are moored. So this is highlighted now in the blue rectangles. And prior to enter this port, there are some waiting areas outside of the port. So these are shown here with these rectangles. So out of all this information, well, we see this here, but we don't have this represented in our data. We are trying to build areas such that we have some kind of filtering mechanism to account for which vessel is at the port. So giving a subset of data that has specific vessel data that has specific properties, like being close to the port, stationary with this destination, we can then use the convex hull, as you can see here on the right-hand side, to represent such a port. So we can have this automated global analysis, and this gives us then a polygon, so basically longitude and latitude tuples or pairs that describe this area, and then we can scale this on a global scale for all desired ports by simply analyzing the vessel data and the ports data. Then on top of it, we do the enrichment, and so knowing how much of a capacity we have there. And I will show you the results of how the vessel accumulation dashboard now looks like. So this is here built on Stargate, and with the specific use case for one of our clients in the UK. On the right-hand side, you can see on the top, there's the number of vessels at the port, and you will see that Immingham is, for instance, on the east coast of the UK, has the most vessels passing by. So on the data has been summarized here or aggregated to a monthly average of around 100 vessels. And if you take a look down here on the capacity at the port, you can see that actually it's not Immingham that has the largest capacity in the UK, but Felixstowe and Southampton. So they are outperforming these ports. Now, if we want to drill down, I will now play a demo, and I hope that this works. So yeah, you can see the cursor moving around and selecting a port. So first we go to the port of Felixstowe. And again, there you have further details on it, such as the number of ports, the number of vessels in the first row. And in the second row, you can see that most of them are dry cargo, so container vessels. And when we move to Immingham, you can see that this is then mostly tankers and LPG, and also more ports there. So this is also reflective of what we know about these ports. For instance, that Immingham is one of the largest ports for energy in the UK, while Felixstowe is the largest container port there. So what we can conclude from this dashboard are some interesting points here. First of all, it's an informative overview of what's happening at the port. So maybe we can deduce there. You can certainly lay then some predictive modeling. Do we have over proportionally many vessels that are anchored at the port, indicating maybe that there's a disruption, or maybe a net cat impact. We saw this also in the data when we are studying the Chinese sea and ports there. Then the next point is about sensible KPIs. So you saw that there might be some ports which have many vessels passing by or entering it, but in fact you might also want to take a look at the capacity, because that's really what is a good proxy in terms of the size of a port and how important it is. And then the third one is, of course, that various users requires various granularity of data, so or information. So while this would be maybe good for someone from managing an entire portfolio of vessels, in this what we presented here is certainly not sufficient for someone who's tracking individual vessels and just wants to know if his shipment will be on time or not. So with this, I give the word back to Matteo, and we conclude then the talk.
Thank you, Jakob. I mean, just final remarks, basically, in this very wordy slide, actually, just noticed. And as Jakob was saying, so I mean, the main scope of this vessel accumulation dashboard is to allow decision makers. They have a portfolio of vessels, or they are, for example, retail company that they have many shipments around, really to control and monitor the status of their shipments and their vessel in real time, and really control also the accumulation of ports, so that eventually, if, for example, there is a strike in the UK, like it happened last July, if I recall correctly, they are able to reroute a vessel in real time. Instead, they're going to Southampton, that was experiencing the strike, to another port in the UK, and avoid the delay and disruption in the supply chain. And thanks to, of course, the efficient data engineering that we have developed with Jakob on this end, all the dashboard is completely automatically, and also the area or the port is identified automatically by the data. And so user has just to select, basically give us the information about which port they are interested in, and then the port is monitored automatically, and the risk, of course, are also assessed automatically in terms of both vessel accumulation on one port, but also the NACA risk that can be present at one particular port. And therefore, with this dashboard, really decision maker, port authorities, or even an insurer like Swiss Re can have just at their fingerprints a completely overview of all potential risks that are there for vessels, and also uncover also risks that were probably not directly related to a vessel, like the one that we mentioned before, when a vessel just drifts around the port in order to enter, and the NACA risk exponentially increase. And therefore, having this dashboard with all the data there are available and all the risk insights that are provided really allows at the end to have a more resilient supply chain, and really to reduce or potentially mitigate supply chain disruption. And with this, we are happy to answer any question you might have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions in the audience? Two over there.
Thank you. I thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. I'm very interested in some more detail of how you actually did this convex hull, because if I understood it correctly, the data you had to extract it from the vessel locations and port locations. I'm just like if you could share a bit more details.
Sure. So think about it. If I go back to this slide here, that was more illustrative example. So what we want to have is a critical mass of observations of vessels that are close to the port. So we actually take, first of all, a subset of vessels that are close to the port in terms of maybe a radius or or some plus minus degrees in longitude and latitude. Then finally, once we have the selection, there's a simple function that draws then the convex hull around it and gives you back the points such that you would, I mean, I can't show it right here, I just can't reach the points there, but that would draw something like a rectangle around a couple of points here, which are the relevant vessels. So for instance, one on the lower right, it's passing by, so this is not then in the critical mass for the or subset of vessels that is used to draw this convex hull. Yeah. I hope that answers it. Otherwise, we can also have a discussion off stage.
There was one question nearby, yes?
Hi, super. Thank you for the talk. So you guys, the solution primarily looks at vessels. Do you also have the solution in other areas, say, for example, the aviation industry?
So from my knowledge, we had some projects on aviation delay, but I'm not up to date there, so I would have to ask internally.
I can give you another overview because we used to have a solution similar to this one for aviation as well, really to assess the delay of basically flights, particularly. And it was rolled out as a solution, but then it was dismissed after a few years because it was too challenging to get the right data with the right frequency, and it was not accurate enough, particularly for an insurance product point of view. Just at the end, there was no market interest for the insurance product. So, and at the moment, we don't have any live solution like in Palantir, similar to this one for aviation.
Yes. One question in the front here.
Thank you for the talk. So thinking in terms of that product that you just mentioned, how would you sell it to a different industry? Because I heard at some point you said the client will tell you, look at this vessel or something like this. Is it also possible that you just sell the whole solution and the client just enters the question of interest, or what's the business model for the product?
Okay, yeah, great questions. So there are probably 2 points of views on this end for the business side. On one side, this is just an analytic solution that we can sell to, like, for example, port authorities, that they can control really the vessel traffic at their own ports, basically. And what we are also building is a prediction of how many how many vessels they will have at their ports, really to manage their own operation end to end. So on one end, the analytic solution. On the other end, there are insurance products. So for example, if I am a retail customer, that I have to ship my my goods from Asia to Europe and going through, for example, the UK, I know which ports are busy, so I can try to reroute my vessel to another port and therefore avoid delay. And that probably basically decreases your premium at the end if you have this solution, and you can buy or you can buy also insurance product based on real-time monitoring of your supply chain with this.
Thank you. very much for being here. That was interesting. Thank you for your interesting questions. This is a little present for you. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
being
Anna.
here, Matteo.
Thank
you. And this is for you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jakob.
Thank you.
And thank you. If you need to change your room, please do so now. In the next 10 minutes, the program will go on in here. Thank you very much. See you later.
Thank you.